In July 20, 1969, it was most astonishing achievements in human history while the Apollo 11 landing on Moon. That day, an estimated 530 million TV viewers watched US astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin take their first step on Moon. Afterward, the two men and third crew member Michael Collins flew safely back to Earth and landed in the Pacific Ocean. Yet, just a few years later, some people claim the giant leap for mankind had been fake. Conspiracy theories that the moon landing was actually a hoax. They have persisted to this day. Most of the deniers proved is based on perceived anomalies in the image transmitted back to Earth from the moon's lunar surface. With few exceptions, the same arguments just keep coming up over and over again, says Rick Fingerberg, the press officer for the American Astronomical Society, who holds a PhD in astronomy. He has some first-hand knowledge for this nearly 40 years ago. Fingerberg debated one of the first prominent moon landing deniers. The initial claims the moon landing was tagged came at a time when the Pentagon Papers and Watergate had eroded Americans' trust in their government. But faking the success of the Apollo 11 mission would require deceptions on a grand scale and would be practically impossible to pull off, says Fingerberg. About 4 lakh scientists, engineers, technologists, machinists, electricians worked on the Apollo program. Fingerberg pointed out, if in fact the main motivation for believing in the moon hoax that is you don't trust the government, you don't trust your leaders, you don't trust authority, how can you feel that 4 lakh people would keep their mouths shut for 50 years? It's just implausible. Here we break down some of the most enduring conspiracy theories about the moon landing and why there is no evidence to support them. Number 1. The moon landing is fake because the American flag looks like it is flapping in the wind. If you look at the American flag still pictures from the Apollo 11 mission, it appears to be flapping in the wind. But how can that be, since there's no wind on the moon? The simple answer is, it is not flapping. That's because it is not an ordinary flag. If the astronauts had planted a regular flag on the moon, it would have hung slack like flags do on Earth when there's no wind. This would not make for a very appealing photo, so NASA designed special flags for astronauts to take with them. These flags had a horizontal rod inside to make them stick out of the flagpole. The Apollo 11 astronaut had traveled extending the rod all the way, and in still pictures this creates a ripple effect that makes the flag look like it's waving in the wind. In video images of the flag, you can see it only moves while the astronauts are grinding it into the moon's surface. After the astronauts step away, it stays in the same bent shape because of the partially extended rod. Number 2. The moon landing is fake because you cannot see the stars. One of the first arguments I heard, and one of the easiest to debunk, is the fact that there are no stars in the lunar sky, Fingerberg says. Or rather, there are no stars in the pictures that Armstrong and Aldrin look on the moon. But if you have ever used a camera before, it is easy to understand why. All of the exposures of the astronauts on the moon are daylight exposures. He explains, the surface was brightly illuminated and the astronauts are wearing bright white spacesuits that are highly reflective. The exposures on the astronauts' cameras was too short to capture the spacesuits and the moon surface while also capturing the comparatively dimmer stars. The same thing happens if you go onto someone's back, approach the mind and turn on the lights. Even though you can see the stars from where you are standing, a quick exposure camera don't be able to capture them. Number 3. The moon landing is fake because the shadows are not right. In images from the moon landing, it is possible to see certain objects even though they are in shadow. Skeptics argue that if the sun were the only source of light, this would not be the case. Therefore, the fact that you can see some object in shadow must be the result of special Hollywood lighting. The problem with this theory is that although the sun is the main source of illuminations on the moon, it is not the only source of illuminations. Another source is the lunar ground, which reflects the sunlight in the Apollo 11 pictures. The sunlight is being scattered or reflecting off the ground every which day, and some of it is small fractions but enough to be able to see scatters into the shadows, Fingberg says. This is why in some images you can make out a plaque that Armstrong and Aldrin left on the moon even though it's lying in shadow. Number 4. The moon landing is fake because you cannot see Armstrong's cameras. In one of the pictures from the moon landing, you can see Armstrong clearly reflected in Aldrin's visor. Some skeptics have pointed out that Armstrong does not appear in the holding a camera, so someone else must be taking the picture, but that is not true. Armstrong could not walk around the moon with a regular handheld camera. In this bulky suit, he needed something that was easy to manipulate. The camera he used on the moon was mounted on the front of his suit, which is where his hands are in the reflection.